Because when you connect with people on a relational level, they start to give you the keys to speak the truth. And one of the things that's true in discipleship, one of the things that's true in parenting, is that when you want to speak truth into somebody's life, it's built on a platform of trust. And the only way you earn trust is by spending time with them. And when you spend time with people, especially your leaders, and get to know them, find out their story and what's happening in their life, then you earn the right to get the hard data. But so, and I say that to answer your question. It's a little bit complex and long answer, but the point is that you have to be able to earn the right to speak into people's lives. Part of that is just that aspect of building a relationship.
Welcome to another episode of the Build Groups podcast. My name's Adam Ehrlichman, your host, and with us, your co-host, Matt Moore. Man, Matt, how are you doing today?
Adam, it's a good day, man. Beautiful day here in Frisco, Texas, and just excited to be back doing a podcast with you. It's been a little bit, and excited about our guest today, and it's just exciting to see what God's doing in His church, and excited to hear about what Steve's doing and where that's headed.
Amen. We have had a little bit of a lull and a break there of no new episodes that have been released, and you've been busy. I've been really busy with Build Group stuff, and there's just been a lot of things firing on all cylinders. Really, really good kingdom expanding, type stuff, like exciting. So, guys, like we knew coming back to this episode, we had to bring like the best. We had to bring in a big hitter. Bases loaded, bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, and we are bringing in my opinion, by my estimation, from my personal experience, and you can't invalidate my personal opinion on this. So if you disagree, it's okay, you're wrong. I think to modern day, this is without a doubt the best small groups person, small groups leader, pastor that you could hear from. With his history, with his pedigree, with what he has done. There is not a person in the small groups world today that has not been influenced, affected, or formed in some way or just to some degree by his ministry. And so I am super excited to redeem our absence with bring on an awesome guest, Steve Gladen. Let me tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll have Steve just tell us a little bit about himself. He'll kind of fill in the cracks of the things that I don't cover. But I do want you to get a little bit of context. We always share a little bit about whenever we have someone come on and their ministry in the background, because there are going to be some great nuggets of wisdom that they're going to share that you're going to want to take and you're going to want to implement, but we want to be sure that you apply those properly to your context. And so Steve is in California. He's been at Saddleback Church for nearly 28 years. He has recently gotten to step away into what I think is going to be the culmination of some of his most impactful ministry with the small group network in the years to come here. And he has overseen the strategic launch and spiritual development of over 7,000 adult small groups on 21 campuses internationally. And so Steve's reach and influence and oversight in his role at Saddleback over these last 28 years has been far expanding and wide in many different contexts and many different ways. And so there's a lot for you to get to hear from him today. There's more than what we can discuss and fit into a podcast episode. But want you to just get to hear some from him and what he has coming up and what they're doing now. I'm personally super, super excited because we need more of this stuff in the small groups world, and him moving into a full-time capacity small group network, I think is phenomenal. So Steve, welcome to the Build Groups podcast. Would you mind telling our audience just a little bit about yourself and some background?
Well, great to be on the show, and just you almost read it verbatim what I wrote to you about what you should say about me. So the intro is just perfectly done. I left out a few of the superlatives that I threw in there, but it's great to be here. It's fun. A little bit about me is I'm old. I'm having fun being old and doing all that. But married for 36 years and have two kiddos. One is my daughter's married and serving at a church in Nashville. And they got married about a year and a half ago. Have a son who's 24. He is out of college, was in computer programming, was his degree, and AI. Did a great job of evaporating that world. And so he's working on animation and 3D graphics. So he's, getting stretched already in his 20s, but loving that. And like you said, I just have stepped out of Saddleback. Huge faith step. Lots to that story that I'm happy to go into as if there's a question about that, but it's been a good step and a good thing for me to step out. And like I said, have done ministry to the local church for about 35 years, excited to take my last 5 years and make it an impactful one and recruit more of the generation behind me. Nothing about aging and stuff like that, but a lot of the friends I used to do ministry with 30 years ago are aging out with Jesus, or they're, retiring on some little island and don't want to be bothered. So they're having a real small group. But it's one of those things where it's fun to try to pour into that next gen that I'm praying that in 5 years, it can be a great handoff, be a legacy piece for me, but hopefully it'll be a beneficial piece for the overall church in what we've got planned and what we're trying to do.
Amen. That is great, man. I've already said it a few times, and for those of you listening, he didn't script that to me. That was from the heart. That's truly how I feel. Now, the things he did script to me, I did inflate, I think, a whole ton of the number. No, I'm just kidding. No.
You'd be a true pastor if you didn't inflate something.
Just a little. You got the license, you got to use it every now and then.
Yes.
So, Steve, would you mind sharing just a bit more? And this is, again, we always ask anyone who comes on to guest talk with us a bit of their ministry background and experience more specifically. And we do like to hear some of the data points or numbers and to what degree
Sure.
all that is. Mainly, again, it's not brag. It's just helps people contextualize the principles that are shared and spoken here. So yeah, just tell us a little bit more about your small groups ministry background.
Yeah. So if you put it into a 40-year increment, which is just so weird to say, but in 84 is when I started in ministry, still in seminary and working in church, really used small groups in the very beginning, but in all honesty, it was more survival. Used it in student ministry, and in North Hollywood, California, just knew that I would have a better chance of surviving if the numbers were broken down and, things would be less chaotic. It wasn't until a little bit later in ministry that I started to learn systems and stuff like that and did groups more as a system. But it wasn't until about halfway through my ministry time that I started to use groups in a strategic way, in a more purposeful way. And so that's the real gem that I think what happens in the church overall so many times is Jesus gave us a very simplistic playbook. The church has always done a great job of making it more complex than it needs to be. And part of that is because we keep jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing instead of working the initial playbook. In the churches I've been in real poor churches. And just, it's a crack up because when I first started small group ministry, I was trying to learn, and we were at a church that at this time it was in Woodland Hills, but it was a little bit more this is the back. Just talking to you young pups just kills me. But this was back when you had to pay for long distance. You have no idea. That was when a phone was corded, and that's when there was nothing else. And only the wealthy of the wealthy of the wealthy maybe had some brick in their car called a cell phone. But anyways, I digress. But the thing is the only way to learn was to be able to buy a book about small group ministry. But for me, who learns more audible and more experiential, you're left to trying to write letters to churches saying, hey, can I talk to somebody? Hoping they'll call me. That way they're paying for the long distance call and all that. So, but it was really at a formative age that I said, if if I ever get a platform, if I can ever, get to a place where I can utilize my platform to help everybody else, because what happens in ministry is that most people think all the great ideas come from the mega churches. And I've been on a very, very super mega church, and I've been in tiny, tiny churches. And what can happen is everyone gravitates to the numbers and to the thing that's going, and not realizing some of the things that there are great ideas happening in other churches, but because they're not known, they're just not told. And so part of what I've always wanted to do with the network is to say, in these latter years, when I had a platform, how do I shine the light on other people so that have good ideas, so that we can all learn in the body of Christ? So the journeys, I've been in all different kinds of churches. I've been in 5 churches. Each one's been a different denomination. So that's I don't know if that says more about me or just the journey of my life, but they majored on the major. So it's been an incredible ride. And even with my stepping away from Saddleback, even though I'm a part of Saddleback, I'm still one of the elders. When you're not on a staff, boy, it feels, and that can be volunteer or it can be paid. So when you're not on that, it can be quite a tilting, been quite an emotional roller coaster ride for me as I've been in this ship, figuring it out until and make the small group network financially solvent enough so that we can have staff. But a little snapshot right there.
That's great, Steve. I've always appreciated, man, your kindness to other small group pastors, specifically myself. I was looking at my phone. I'm like, when did I meet Steve? And it was like back in 2021, which is crazy. It's been 4 years, and
Wow.
just even that time, me being at a smaller church and you being at a mega church, like being available to answer questions when things have come up and via text or phone call. Knowing people that are going through difficult situations and knowing you've reached out to them, like you just had a heart for small group pastors. You can see it. You're passionate about it. Being a part of the small group network for me has been great, getting to meet other small group pastors. And so we're all excited about what's coming with the small group network. Why don't you share with us kind of what you see coming in the coming months and years in the small group network and kind of your vision behind that?
But it's pretty exciting. And in some ways, I feel a little, it's the woulda, coulda, shouldas. And, but in 2007, God really placed it on my heart to start the small group network. And what happened was the tipping point is I had a call from a guy named John Grant on an evening call, just asking questions about groups. And the next morning, I had a call from a guy named Eddie Mosley who had almost a similar call about that. And when they said that they were both from the same city, I go, "Hey, do you know this player?" And he goes, "No, don't know this guy at all." And I go, "How far is this from you?" And he goes, 10 minutes. And I go, "You don't know him?" And what has been interesting that I've seen in life is that when I was a student pastor, you network just organically. You found other student pastors. That could be because you were scared to death, didn't know what you're doing, or you needed a game, or you needed something. But you networked naturally, and it was a common position in the church. When you get into adult ministry, probably because of life stage, you tend to get married, you have kids, and life gets a little bit more full. You don't naturally network as much as you should. And so part of what I was trying to do is this saying, how can I be a matchmaker for people in the city and also churches of like size? So it is one of those pieces where that was in 2007. Now I was on staff at Saddleback, didn't feel confident enough in myself, but felt like I was obeying a God a little bit. And we went on a journey of just many times was like going, "You should take this out. You should take this out." And God just is patient. And he finally just said, "Well, you know what? Enough's enough. Here we go. I'm going to help blast you out because you're an impacted molar and obviously you need to come on out." So the circumstances changed enough and it fit into what I felt God wanted me to do at Saddleback Church enough. And it still gets scary. I'm just fearful. That's not fearful like of the enemy or anything like that, but just how the enemy likes to play in your mind and stuff like that. And so part of what we're doing in the network is taking it to that next level. We're still on our fundamental principles of wanting to be able to connect relationally, resource strategically, and impact globally. But the thumbnail pitch of it on this elevator ride of about 30 floors right now is to help eradicate loneliness. There's many things that are happening in our nation because people are lonely. When people are lonely, the devil has a field day with them. They get crazy. They do silly things. And there's a lot of, dehumanization that can happen, if that's even a word. But we want to eradicate loneliness in three different layers of connecting personally. And that is in the pastoral staff. I have a real heart for church planters and for pastors who are solo people. Most of you guys know that 90% of the churches are less than 100. They're run by a single player. My brother was one. He's a bivocational pastor. And it's just lonely if you don't know the resources or don't have the coaching that you need. But eradicate loneliness in the pastoral teams. Also to be able to help eradicate loneliness in the churches. 66% of churches don't train. This is a Barna study that just came out. 66% of churches don't have adequate training for their small group people. And I figured the other one, I could look it up on my phone if you want me to grab, but there's some staggering statistics in this latest Barna book just on discipleship and community that is just talking about how there is not an adequate help of churches knowing what to do. When you think of temple courts and house to house, we focus on temple courts. We miss the whole engine behind Acts 2:42 through 47. And then the third area is just into your community with that. Then the next layer down is to resource strategically. And although Bible sales are up, Bible engagement is down, according to the American Bible Society. And so what we're doing is we're creating resources that get people back into the Bible, get back to the playbook. The Bible in the first century was always designed to be read in community. You would never read one of the letters or epistles by yourself, but you'd gather people together and you would read it to the people so that they get to interface and react to it. But yet what's happened is we've tended to isolate people even further by saying, do your quiet time and stuff like that, which is totally fine. Don't mistake me and don't do an outtake just on that part of my sentence. But
we got our clip. We got our clip there.
But the point is that we want to get people to engage God's word more. Too many Americans have a Bible that they've never opened, they've never read, they never do it daily. So we groups that way. And then the third thing is we want to impact the family, the community, the church, the community, and the world. And basically it's just, we don't want people to be a container. We want them to be a conduit. If you know something, you share it with a sister church. You share it with a church you may not be a sister church. You share it with someone in another state, or you share someone, on the other planet. But the bottom line is that we want to help connect relationally, resource strategically, impact globally through eradicating loneliness, through helping Bible engagement go higher, and helping, people be more of a conduit of everything that God has given them.
Man, that's so good. So good. I love the emphasis on all three of those, but the Bible engagement, Bible literacy piece, you're so right. I mean, that's an area that I feel like in our church we've grown in, but being strategic about how to teach your people how to open their Bible, read it, and apply it is so vital in the local church. And its groups are such a good place for that.
Yeah. And you hate to even, I hate to share this with you, but we did a survey with a lot of our groups. And it was interesting that, we asked them all kinds of different questions, but one of the things was that we don't want homework. And so we're creating a Bible engagement tool that you'll read the Bible, you'll read about the context, and you'll do the questions. So there's no homework, but at least we'll get you in the Bible. And then we have 10-minute audio pieces that can accompany it if you want to take that step and get into God's word for 10 minutes each day. So it's a great audio tool that we have. So it's an exciting piece though, but it's common. People are so busy. We're just like I want homework. Now my wife is in a women's group and they love homework, but they're also all not working. So
yeah, so good.
Yeah. Well, I think you're really onto something there on that side of it in the biblical literacy part, especially right in that American culture. It's just you said it, that Bible sales are up, but Bible literacy is down. And
Yeah.
who better to model for church members and faithful followers, or those trying to become faithful followers, what Bible reading should look like than the small group leader?
Yeah.
Like, how influential is that lay person who's leading them in that study, and they go, oh, this is how you study, this is what it looks like to read and learn and apply, and actually they follow through because they have that community and that accountability kind of built in. That's you talk about the biblical literacy, there's a lot of different modes or mechanisms I think the American church is trying to implement to try to help increase that. And I do hear of different ministries or people or pastors trying things. But as someone who's probably a little bit biased, I think you guys are really on to something. That makes a whole lot of sense to me.
When you see that, even then the problem cascades, because then you could look at when 66% of pastors are saying they don't have adequate training for their group leaders, that there's a cascading crumbling of a house of cards sometimes in the church. And so, but what we want to do is help be a solution with all that. We just don't want to state the problem. We want to be a solution. And where I was always using groups more as survival or just a system, what we want to help them see is the strategic value, and how if you'll put the work into it, it'll actually save you time in the end. But that's a whole nother discussion.
That's great. Yeah. The other thing, just one more thing to add on to that. I think the members of our churches, the people in our church want it as well. They want the tools to be able to get fruit out of opening their Bible. In every group I've been in, and I'd argue in almost every group in every church, during the prayer time, there's somebody that says, man, I'm just not consistent in my time with the Lord. Or they're saying something to the effect of, when I open my Bible, I'm not getting anything out of it. And so bringing those tools.
I got to read this one stat for you.
Yeah.
And I know this is not podcast etiquette, what you're supposed to do, but
we threw that out the window a long time ago. Yeah. We threw podcast etiquette out a long time ago. Yeah. Go ahead.
You should see how many times Matt's interrupted other people. You're great. He's got a deficit to build out of still. Go ahead.
Yes.
I was going to go into some your high humor, but then I thought, no, let's not do that. But the main motivations for attendance from this survey, 75% wanted to go into a group to learn more about Christ, kind of like echoing what you're saying, Matt. To learn more about the scripture was 71%, and 69% was to develop a deeper faith and being able to share it. And so you have these things. So the people are desiring, just like you said, but yet we sometimes miss it, or we crowd the church calendar so much that they can't get to it. And so there's so many things where we can help the church and be with it. I've experienced it on being with a solo pastor. I was an intern. He was a solo guy, and, all the way to, seeing it in bigger churches. But sometimes we can just get too much over the our own skis, and just forget what Jesus said was be simplistic.
Yeah. And there's a good 2,000-year history of success with the primary vehicle Jesus used to make disciples and prepare his to turn the world upside down. I digress. So
It's a good place to digress, though.
Yeah, because we will go off on a few rabbit trails on that one, all of us. But so let me ask you this, Steve. You talked a lot about the different ways that you guys you guys have been doing a lot of things that you just said that you want to do and will continue and expand and offer all those different things that you're doing to help churches with biblical literacy, small groups, relational connections with the small group circles that you guys have in places all around the country, all around the world. What is something you see as a challenge right now, specifically for like the small groups pastor or staff or director point person? What is something that you see maybe that has been a challenge, and what are some things because that is a lot of our audience who tune in and listen to this podcast are more your staff people. or
Yeah.
those who are the point people. Something you see it's been a need, and what would you say to that? How would you
Well,
speak to them about that need?
so there's two avenues. I actually go down two big pockets. One pocket is you either got a church where the pastor is very engaged and they're very pro group. And really, when I look at my time at Rick, he knew it from the head, probably the first 5 years I was there. And the rest of the time he knew it from his heart. Yeah, because he was in a group. And so when you have a pastor that's all for it, you're like going, God is good, I'm good, and let me move on with it. I mean, I'd always tell Rick that, Rick, you are the primary small group pastor. I'm just the one that catches and, helps them find homes and stuff like that. But there's also the pastor that, just doesn't have a clue. And they're focused on the weekend, and rightfully so, man, because when they finish on Sunday, they're on a less than 7-day clock ticking where they're back up again. And I totally get it. But so that they're not really right where you'd want them to be. In the show notes, there's a podcast that I did on, 7 things you can do when your pastor is not on board. And that'll help give you some guidelines and help take you to a different, platform. But you have that is probably one of the critical things, because whether we like it or not, the pulpit is the rudder of the church, and it's going to take us to where where it's going to go. And so part of that is influencing the senior pastor. But where I would encourage people to start is just working on discipleship. And what most churches don't know is they cannot articulate what they want to see in a disciple. When I'm consulting with churches, I'll pass a 3x5 card around and I'll say, don't write on here the address of your church, but give me the address of a disciple. And if Matt was the, your target of a disciple, you spent years with him and he is the perfect disciple, which we know is a false statement. But if
Absolutely.
if that was close to being true, is that what would he exude? What is it that you want him to exude? And most of our churches, we have great logo lines, but the small group leader has no idea what success is. And what I would encourage you is don't put that on your senior leader, but be able to lead up and say, hey, is this something that you would like to get behind? Be a part of that solution instead of just saying, hey, you're not pushing groups enough. You're not talking about it or something like that. Work relationally and be able to say, hey, I don't know. If you can be transparent about saying, I'm not sure exactly what the church is wanting. And so would you like me to bring a proposal or what we can do? But more times than not, most churches, if I look at those 3x5 cards with the senior leadership of the church, there are some similarities, but there is not clarity about what everybody's trying to do. And so getting the church aligned, getting the church understanding what their playbook is, and helping to build from that, those are probably the two of the biggest deficits I see in the church. One, you can't do anything about, where the senior leader is. You can start relationally, and hopefully that podcast will help you. But the other thing is on the area of discipleship, you can at least start to bring some ideas and be able to say, hey, I read in a book, they do the 5 verbs of the Great Commission and the Great Commandment. Is that something you'd like to do with that? And so you can kind of go that way. But the point is that, start to get that, the process moving so that you can serve the senior leader as best as possible, because that's what they want too. They want followers of Jesus who are all in making this church go forward. And so you want to be able to help everybody be clear on what that end in mind is.
That is so good. And it's so right on how to, that helps build the culture in the church if everybody knows what the aim is. And
yeah. What's the target? What are you trying to shoot at? What are you trying to do? And using consistent language. I can tell you stories about drifting away from that, but using consistent language, just hitting that nail over and over again, because people don't hear it the first time.
Yeah, there's a couple texts that come to mind. Colossians 1, Paul talks about laboring and toiling to present the church mature.
Yeah.
What is that? Like, it's easy to say we want mature Christians, but defining it really helps on what that looks like. In Ephesians 4, how we equip the saints for the work of ministry.
Yeah.
And then it says, so they're not tossed to and fro to mature manhood. So they're not tossed to and fro. Like, helping define that target helps so much in creating those pathways for people. In growing that culture in the church and growing a group's culture, having that definition, what do you see is like some of the challenges groups are having um, in like multiplying and growing their groups in the local church?
Oh, a few different things. So let's set aside the two things we already talked about and just go into the structure of a small group ministry. Having done this, I don't care what your end in mind is or what's a disciple, what is a disciple for your church. There's certain common things that build the structure of a small group ministry. And if you know what your end in mind is, then what you got to do is build a pathway to get there. And so part of what you got to understand is that not everyone's going to understand as clearly as you, and you have to lay out simple things. And one of the phrases we always use is, what's a crawl step? What's a walk step? What's a run step? How do we get, excuse me, how do we get you moving from point A to point B to point C, and hopefully through the whole alphabet? But the point is that you've got to have a pathway that says most groups are going to get together for one of two things, either fellowship or discipleship. And what you're going to say is, based on that, what you want to produce in people, what are you trying to do? If you're just trying to build something to connect people, that's easy to do. There's all kinds of people that are doing it. But what makes the church different from a book club, from some guys and gals sitting at a bar just watching a game together, from doing pickleball or something like that together? What makes the church different is that there's a spiritual void that people have, and the only thing that can fill it is the gospel. And so when you develop a pathway for that to happen, then you can start to move people towards the end in mind. But you also have to have two guardrails that keep the group on course. One is a head guardrail, which is not limited to, but three important factors in there is training. How are you going to train these people? Another thing is a curriculum pathway. How are you going to use curriculum as a tool to get to the end in mind? And then the third thing is, what are the tools that can assess whether we're doing the job or not doing the job? On the other guardrail is a heart guardrail, and it's usually consistent of people, because you build something that can scale. I don't care if you're in a church of 50. There's no way a senior leader can know the spiritual health of all 50 people. I have 2 kids. I can barely keep track of my kids. And my daughter married somebody, now I got 3. And I need that for it. And so how are you helping with that? But the other thing too is data. And so often data is described as hard data and soft data. The hard data is the information you want. When is your group meeting? How many people were in the group? Did you do leader training 1? Did you take the assessment? All these things that you want. But really what people want to give you is the soft data, and that's their story, who they are, what are they about, what do they love to do? Are they married? Are they single? What's your spouse's birthday? What's your birthday? And different things like that. Because when you connect with people on a relational level, they start to give you the keys to speak the truth. And one of the things that's true in discipleship, one of the things that's true in parenting, is that when you want to speak truth into somebody's life, it's built on a platform of trust. And the only way you earn trust is by spending time with them. And when you spend time with people, especially your leaders, and get to know them, find out their story and what's happening in their life, then you earn the right to get the hard data. But and on top of all that, you got to figure out how you get people on the pathway. And so it's a simple diagram but it's really a picture that we would give all of our small group pastors and say, this is what you're trying to build. And so many of the things we already provided for them. But the thing is, what generally they needed to do was work on the relational part of getting to know the people. So, and I say that to answer your question. It's a little bit complex and long answer, but the point is that you have to be able to earn the right to speak into people's lives. Part of that is just that aspect of building a relationship. The converse of that is if any of you guys go to a sporting event or any type of large event, there's going to be some person out there on a megaphone screaming that if you don't know Jesus, you're going to hell. And they're speaking truth. But the problem is there's no trust because the person hasn't spent time with them. And so it's a whole strategy behind the structure of a small group ministry. But the main thing is you got to know what you're building so you can get to the end in mind.
Steve, would you say, and probably just off experience of maybe other people you've seen or known or heard stories, would you say that there are small group point people out there that have fallen into that error of trying to implement structure without earning that trust from people? And, and if you have seen that, I'm assuming you probably have seen some of that or heard some of that at a very just practical level, like ground level, someone's going, hey, I don't feel like I can move the ball forward I have this really good system or the structure and it's really well built out, but they can't seem to get it moving. It just doesn't seem to be coming alive and the people are activating like, you're talking about hitting that nail again and again.
Yeah.
What would you encourage someone who's in that spot, maybe just to do from a day-to-day, week-to-week basis?
Yeah. So one of the things I'll throw into the show notes for you guys is we use it for our community leaders that help oversee group leaders, but it's applicable all the way down the line. And we walk through an acrostic called friend, acrostic on leader, and acrostic on coach. And the thing is, most people, and that is in Adam, what you're asking is a common question because people can do it with the onesies and twosies, but when you're in a church level, how do you do that? And I wish there was a shortcut, but there isn't. And it's going to take time because the only way you can get to know people is to spend time with them. And the beautiful thing is if you do it when the church is small, when you're constantly bumping into people because you're all doing so many multiple things, but you're just building a friendship with them. And not only is it a common question, it's one of the big things I kept hammering into our staff, kept on saying, I am paying you to have coffees with people. I am paying you to have breakfast, lunch with people. Do that. And it became one of the metrics. If you're in a larger church, one of the best metrics you can do is just find out how many coffees did they have that week? How many breakfasts did they have? How many lunches did they have with the people that are under their care? Because unless you spend time with the sheep, you won't know the sheep. And if you go back to that John 11:4, the sheep will know their voice. And the best way to guide them is just to be a relation piece with them. So I wish there was a thing that could happen, but part of it is, and what I've told Andy at Saddleback, I said, your new small group system that you want to run, it's not going to pop overnight. It's going to take time because you've got to build it naturally and organically so that it can build on top of each other as best as possible. And that's one of the things why in the church level, there's so many things that are happening. You shortcut trying to get to know people and spend time with them because it doesn't produce that big number, that big stuff that you're looking for. And if you're a church planter, the best thing you can do is, you can just have a breakfast with people, have coffees with people. If you do it right, they'll probably pay for it too, because you're the pastor. But, I digress.
Amen.
But, you want to move that way relationally, get to know people because that's what's going to motivate them to take it to that next level of involvement in your church.
How many coffees or lunches would you encourage your staff to do in a week? Like if they're only responsible, right? They're a small time groups person or a full time groups person. How many a week was like appropriate? Just kind of give some bandwidth or expectation maybe for some of our audience?
Well, because I'm aggressive, I'm like going, I know you got to have breakfast. I know you got to have lunch. I know you like to caffeinate yourself, and I know you love to decaffeinate yourself. So, there's 4 a day. Now, they're not going to, they've got other things they got to do. So I totally get that. But what I would do is kind of like when you're raising your kids, I would put it to them. How many do you think you can do? And find out where their mind is at and try to stretch them a little bit.
So you would ask them, how many do you think you could, and then you slip them a coffee and go, now, how many do you think you could do? Is that what it
Oh, no, then I would give them a jolt. And then,
that's
a jolt with a little espresso.
That's so contextualized to that generation. That's amazing. That's great. Here's a Red Bull. Bam. So, I love that.
So we're coming up to the end of our time here. So I'm going to ask one question. It's our favorite question. And it's we'd love to hear a life change story from groups that you've experienced in leading groups for so many years, and where you've just seen life change in somebody primarily because of what's happening in community.
Sure, man.
Sure, you have dozens, hundreds. Yeah.
Thousands.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But let me share you the one that's most dear to my heart. So there was a girl named Marcy, 19 years old, and she had just become a believer, and she started a group, and she invited her girlfriends to this group. And one of the groups her name was Nita, and she, through going through just the Gospel of John. So you got a 3-month-old believer. She didn't know what to do, didn't know she was doing it. She does it on her own. She gets girls together. They read the Gospel of John. They say, what does it mean to you? This girl named Nita, she finds Jesus and then takes it back to her house. Her mom had been a seeker and was looking. And then her mom, through talking with her daughter, comes to know Jesus. She leads her younger brother to the Lord. She ends up, the 3 of them tag team. They lead their dad to the Lord, has a miraculous conversion from going from drinking hard alcohol, smoking, and making wine to just giving all those up to focus more on Jesus. And then their 3 older brothers come to know the Lord with their mom and, their kids. And so when you look at it, because this girl named Marcy takes the risk and finds and leads a study, a small group, and impacts Nita, who impacts the house. And in that house, 19 people got saved. Now, that's one incredible part of the story. But the real incredible part of the story is the younger brother. It's me.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a story describes me every time. But there is a lady, she's probably with Jesus, who altered. She was a destiny changer. I have no idea what I've been doing. I may have been making lots more money, would have to worry about this and all that kind of stuff. Who knows? But she was a destiny changer for me. And part of what I tell group leaders all the time is, you don't know what you have in your group. And she doesn't know that I went on to be a group's pastor. She doesn't know that I went on to doing what she did. And so the incredible piece is, I keep telling people is, you just don't know. You don't know. And so when I get to heaven, sure, I'll hug Jesus and high five Paul and Peter and see Adam and say, you suck. And after that, I'll be going to look for Marcy because she changed my destiny. And you can be a destiny changer too. That's why I'm so passionate about this and what I'm doing, because it's nothing better. And I could go on and on with other stories, but let me roll the dice back about 40 7 years ago.
Well, Steve, thank you for sharing that story. That's yeah, I've heard some powerful stories. That's a good one. Thanks
Well,
for sharing that with our audience and being vulnerable, and you went deep. You chose one that opened up the tear ducts, and if you are listening and you aren't seeing visually, yeah, that one's a close one to your heart. That's
yeah,
incredible.
it's a life change. So why not do it?
Amen. I tell people this, I say, man, I do what I do because I'm addicted to life transformation.
Yeah.
And you clearly are too. And Matt is, and many of the people that listen to this, I think that we have a healthy addiction to life transformation. And the stories are, man, that's where we get our fixing. It's where it comes, So, man, that is, all that we have time for today, Build Group's audience. And this was a good one. This is really, really good. And there's so many just helpful things from top to bottom and all around, ground level, that you guys can take from this episode that Steve shared, implement appropriately into your context, into your ministry area, that will definitely, I fully believe that the Lord will provide fruit in your ministry as you do so. Now, for those of you want to learn more about the Small Group Network and Steve, where can our audience, where can they learn more about you? How can they reach out to you? What are some things that you would want them to know about you guys in the Small Group Network?
We'll put some of the links in the show notes, but you can go to smallgroupnetwork.com. My cell number, 949-836-6052. Just remember what time zone I'm in. I'm on the Pacific time zone. I'm on the West Coast. So if you live on the East Coast and you have a great idea at your morning devotional at 6 a.m., don't call me. Wait.
Type up a text and hit the send later button, right, for 3 hours from now.
You have a great idea, put it on Pacific time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Someone texted me at like 4 a.m. just yesterday, and I was like, why are you texting me at 4? There's the send later feature in iPhone. What are you doing?
But it's so impactful. I want you to know it now.
Yeah.
This one wasn't. This one was. It wasn't impactful at all to me, Steve. So
I'm sorry, Adam. I didn't mean to send it at that time.
I wasn't gonna call you out, Matt, but I think we need to publicly admonish you now.
Yeah.
In
I think he just
small
did.
group.
Yeah.
Well, he confessed. I didn't have to admonish him.
Yeah.
It was great. It was
That's
good.
true. That was true.
So, man. Well, hey, Steve, thank you so much for coming on to share your wisdom with us.
Excited to be on here. And if you guys aren't connected to the Small Group Network, please do, because we want to help other pastors in your area get connected with each other.
Absolutely. Well, audience, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Build Groups podcast. We hope that this was helpful and gave you some good wisdom nuggets you can take to start some good thought trails, not answer all your questions, but maybe get you going down a thought trail that you hadn't before, and considering and contemplating and implementing some new things that move forward the kingdom. So as groups go, so go the church, and we hope that they grow, thrive, and lead from the front in the strong current of souls being saved, impacted, formed, and becoming more like Christ. You guys have a great rest of your day.